Hey folks, Nathan here. Welcome to Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games. We continue our look this time at Marvel Legendary from Upper Deck. This time we're looking at two big sets that basically work together. It's the only time we've ever seen a Volume 1 and Volume 2 type of pair of expansions for Legendary. We're looking here at Secret Wars Volume 1 and Secret Wars Volume 2. Now, both of these were released back in 2015. We're going to take a look at Volume 1 first, and each one is an expansion of the regular game. So you've got those expansion rules that are generally relatively short to tell you what's new and what has changed compared to the base set you would otherwise be playing with. I would recommend playing either of these with the Heroic base set, which was the original base set, although you can play them with Legendary villains. All of the Marvel Legendary stuff, Heroic and Villainous, can be played together, but there are some, basically Fear itself and villains, that kind of take a different approach than the rest of them and are a little less easy to integrate with the others. So I'd say integrate these with Heroic, but you don't have to. You will need to integrate with some base set though, because this is just an expansion. Now these are based on the comic storyline of the same name. We'll start out here with 4 new Masterminds. Again, 1 Mastermind card and 4 Mastermind tactics each. We have Zombie Green Goblin. We have Nimrod, Super Sentinel. We have Madeline Pryor, Goblin Queen. And we have Wasteland Hulk. We have 3 new sets of Henchmen, which again are 10 cards each that are all identical. We have a Thor Core. I've always kind of liked that rhyme. We have the Ghost Racers, and we have the Modocs. We have a total of 8 new schemes. These are Smash 2 Dimensions Together, Pan-Dimensional Plague, Master of Tyrants, Fragmented Realities, Dark Alliance, Crush Them With My Bare Hands, Corrupt the Next Generation of Heroes, Build an Army of Annihilation, and that brings us back to the original. So 8 new schemes as usual. We have a new type of special bystander called the Banker, and we get 3 copies of that. We have a new type of card called a Sidekick, and we start out with 15 Sidekick cards that are identical. We'll look at those momentarily. We also have a new type of card called Ambition, with one that is a starting ambition. The rest are just regular ambition cards. There are 30 of these in this set. Again, more about that momentarily. We have 6 new villain groups. We have Domain of Apocalypse, right, from Age of Apocalypse. We have the Deadlands. We have Wasteland. We have Limbo. We have Manhattan, Earth 1610, which basically means the Ultimate Universe. And we have Sentinel Territories, your Days of Future Past type characters. As always, these are 8 cards each. We then have 14 new heroes, which always have 14 cards each. So from the Avengers, we have Lady Thor, and we have Captain Marvel. Then from the Spider Friends, we have Ultimate Spider-Man, right? So Miles Morales Spider-Man, basically there. From the X-Men, we have Old Man Logan, we have Magic, and we have Apocalyptic Kitty Pryde. Then we have a new group called the Illuminati. The general gist of this storyline of Secret Wars, essentially, is that you've got all the different parallel universes in the Marvel Universe are sort of clashing together, and eventually they're all going to kind of slam together and only one's going to survive. The Illuminati are a group of Marvel heroes who are aware of this, trying to stop it. So we have Superior Iron Man, we have Black Bolt, we have Doctor Strange, and we have Black Panther. Then, though, we have the story's villains, known as the Cabal. And the Cabal is basically trying to make sure that their universe is the one that survives by destroying all the other ones before they can combine. So we have Namor the Submariner. We have Maximus. We have Proxima Midnight. And we have Thanos. We have some keywords making a return. Bribe is back. Of course, that's the one that lets you basically pay either recruit points or attack to be able to fight a villain. Teleport is back. That's the one that on your turn, when this is in your hand, you can basically sit it aside so that then on the next turn, when you draw your new hand, you can add this as an extra card to that new hand. We have a new feature, which is multi-class cards here. So you notice that this card not only has its affiliation symbol, but two different classes, right? And it's two different colors, too, the green and the yellow. The border generally matches the color of the symbols over here. So this card could theoretically help you set up combos that use either of its two class symbols rather than just one. In this case, if you're curious, that's a Strength and Instinct hero here, along with being a member of Spider Friends, so any of those could set off a combo. You also have an interesting new mechanic where some of your villains, right, that'll be in your villain deck and making their way through the city, some of them, the ones basically from the Manhattan Earth 1610 area, which is basically your Ultimate Universe heroes, and the ones from the Thor Corps will say fight, and it may say something else with it, but fight, gain this as a hero. So what'll happen is it has an attack value, so when you defeat them in the city, instead of them going into your victory pile, they actually enter, just like any other card you've recruited, into your deck via your discard pile, and then when you play them, they actually give you something like a typical card that you would have recruited. So the ability to sort of turn villains into friends once you kind of explain the situation. Hey, we're all heroes. What the heck are you doing? Fight with us, not against us. We also have a new keyword here, Rise of the Living Dead, because we have our zombie characters now showing up. Basically, when a Rise of the Living Dead ability activates, each player checks the top card of their victory pile, and if that card is a villain that has Rise of the Living Dead as an ability on it, that villain re-enters the city. The zombie isn't actually dead, it's still out there undead and kicking. Not really alive and kicking. But what this does mean is that it starts to matter because at the top of your victory pile, it starts to matter if you wind up defeating a villain and saving a bystander that was underneath them, which order you put them into your victory pile. And you, as that player, get to choose. So the smart thing to do if you defeat a Rise of the Living Dead villain from the city that has a bystander under is to stick the villain into your victory pile, but then stick the bystander on top of it. So if you do have one of those Rise of the Living Dead abilities happen, and it checks the top card of your victory pile, the top card will be a bystander that won't have that keyword for sure. We also have a new mechanic called a cross-dimensional rampage. And in this set, you've either got cross-dimensional Hulk rampage or a cross-dimensional Wolverine rampage. Basically what happens is whenever that cross-dimensional whatever it is rampage happens, every player has to reveal one of their heroes that is that character, whether it's Hulk or Wolverine, which could be either in their hand, it could be in their victory pile, could be something that they played that turn, but if they can't show it, then they gain a wound. But bear in mind, it's kind of interesting here that it's not just cards named that. They're actually taking into account the fact that a lot of times you have alternate reality versions of characters that are all the same character but maybe called something different. So like Maestro and Null Breaker of Worlds are both alternate universe Hulks. They count for the cross-dimensional Hulk rampage. Old Man Logan or Weapon X, which is who this is, right? Weapon X. They count as Wolverines. So you got to kind of know the characters to a degree to be able to effectively use those abilities. We also have an interesting situation here that's kind of like what happened with Mysterio, the situation that could wind up giving you multiple masterminds or mastermind tactics to go after. In this case, it's giving you multiple masterminds that you have to go after. And it can appear in a couple different places. For instance, on a scheme like Dark Alliance, Scheme Twist 1, add a random second mastermind to the game with one mastermind tactic. And yes, all masterminds and all their tactics have to be defeated for the heroes to win the game. But you also have characters like Zombie Loki, where it says escape. Loki, or whoever, ascends to become a new mastermind. He gains the ability blah blah blah, which is a master strike usually. Bear in mind here that because they're becoming a new mastermind doesn't mean they're replacing the old one. it's another mastermind in play, so it's yet another you've got to defeat to win. I showed you those sidekicks a moment ago. They're another of these always available stacks. There just isn't a place for them on the actual playmat, so you just kind of sit them over there by your other always available cards. But it's one of these that is always available as long as a stack exists to be able to get a sidekick once per turn for 2 recruit points. You can only recruit one for the cost once per turn, but if there's something else that causes you to gain one, that doesn't count as your one, so theoretically you could have multiple. Basically what it does is, and they are all the same, says you can return this card to the sidekick stack, and if you do, draw 2 cards. Right? So it's kind of like that new recruit back in the villain set. It gives you another always available card that's out there that helps you deal with drawing cards and deck management and stuff like that. Now, the other really crazy thing about Secret Wars is the idea that you could decide to play not with one of the regular masterminds, right? One mastermind and its 4 mastermind tactics and all that. You can actually play with one of the players as a mastermind. It's kind of like if you were to bring the Watchmen crossover pack into the DC deck building game and one of you is a secret mastermind behind the scenes, only in this case, everybody knows who the mastermind is. But you are, similarly, working against everybody else and have your own win conditions. So the way this basically works, we'll say that this top little area for right now, we'll say that's where our mastermind stuff is going to be instead of being just here as the mastermind stack. Okay, so you pick who's going to be the mastermind before the game even starts. You take your 1 red labeled starting ambition here, which is pure evil, and you sit it out, and that is the beginning of a new mastermind row, or ambition deck row, for that mastermind. You take all these other ambition cards and you shuffle them up, and this becomes an ambition deck. Okay? Otherwise, your player that is playing as the mastermind gets a regular starting deck just like everybody else. That way they can generate recruit and generate attack. When you're doing your setup and you're trying to figure out how many heroes, villains, henchmen, and bystanders you should have in the game, you do that based on the number of heroic players, so the mastermind player doesn't count. But when you're putting out your scheme, if the scheme counts the number of players, then you do count the mastermind as a player in terms of the setup, the special rules, and even the evil wins rules. So then at the start of the mastermind player's turn, and bear in mind the mastermind player does take the first turn, they basically, instead of pulling a villain out of the villain deck or something out of the villain deck and putting it into sewers and working its way through the city, they pull a new ambition card. And they can continue putting these out turn after turn until there are 4. There's a maximum of 4 out there. Then on their next turn, when the first thing is that they pull a new ambition card, they have to choose to either discard one of these and replace it with the new one, or just discard the new one. But on their turn, they're able to spend whatever the cost is that's listed there, 5, 2, 3, or 4 attack in this case, to do whatever the card says that'll be to their advantage, and then they discard that ambition card. So how else does this work? Your mastermind can still recruit heroes from the headquarters, essentially corrupting them to evil. It keeps them from being able to join the decks of any of the heroic players and may be useful to your mastermind. The mastermind can also still fight villains like normal if they want to. Generally, they're not going to want to in terms of making it easier on the other players, but maybe there's, say, a fight effect that's really beneficial to whoever pulls off the fight, and they want to keep that effect from being able to be of benefit to the players. They can attack and take out that villain instead. On the other hand, you pull a Master Strike from the villain deck, or a villain with ambush, or a villain escapes with an escape effect, or a villain escapes with a bystander. None of those generally negative effects will wind up affecting the mastermind player, only the heroic players. On the other hand, if you got a card effect like on a scheme, a hero, the fight effect on a villain, that sort of thing, all of those still work on the mastermind player and the heroic players alike. They actually make the suggestion that if you really want to make it a crazy hero versus villain thing, then go ahead and have your regular headquarters here where your heroic characters are recruiting from, but take 3 villainous allies, which are the equivalent of heroes, from the villain set or from Fear itself. Take 3 of them and make a separate layer deck and then like LAIR, just like what the headquarters is called in the villains game, and have a separate layer row that is just for the villain, the mastermind player, to recruit out of, whereas the heroic players are still recruiting for the headquarters. Or flip it around, if you're playing, say, with mostly villains against a commander as opposed to against a mastermind, then the commander player could draw from a separate headquarters row of heroes, whereas all of your villainous players, who are the main players, like in Legendary Villains, they're drawing from the layer from that game's board, or that game's playmat. Pretty cool stuff. It adds a layer of complexity for that mastermind player version of the game, but it certainly adds a more competitive nature to it, where it's essentially everybody ganging up on one player, but that one player having an advantage in trying to stop the heroes, or villains in that case, from being able to succeed. All in all, it feels like a much beefier expansion than what we got with, say, Dark City. That brings us to the continuation of the story in Secret Wars Volume 2, which of course has its own rule supplement as well. You do not need to play with both Secret Wars Volume 1 and 2 when you're playing with either the heroic or the villain core set. It's kind of cool because their mechanics work off of each other, so it's nice to be able to take a heroic starter set and work in both Secret Wars 1 and 2, but you do not have to. Once again, we have 8 new schemes. We have Secret Wars. We have Enthrone the Barons of Battleworld. Deadlands Hordes Charge the Wall. Master the Mysteries of Kung Fu. Sinister Ambitions. The Fountain of Eternal Life. The God Emperor of Battleworld. And the Mark of Khonshu, before being right back to Secret Wars. We have 3 new types of bystanders. We have 3 each of Undercover Agent. We have 3 each of Alligator Trapper. But then we have 4 of Shapeshifted Copycat. Once again, we have 4 new masterminds, each a mastermind card and 4 mastermind tactics. We have Shikla, the Demon Bride. We have Spider Queen. We have Immortal Emperor Zhang Zhu. That's how you're supposed to say that. And then we have King Hyperion. We have a total of 10 new ambition cards in case you're going to play with one of the players as the mastermind player or commander player if you're playing with villains. We have 3 new henchman groups. We have the Magma Men. Again, these are 10 cards each, all identical. We have Spider Infected. And then we have the Khonshu Guardians. We have 6 new sets of villains, all 8 cards each as usual. We have Deadpool's Secret Wars. We have Kunlun. We have Guardians of Nowhere. We have Utopolis. We have my favorite here, X-Men 92. Yes, X-Men as of 1992, right? Like the era of the cartoon and everything. And then Monster Metropolis. And then we have 16 new heroes, as always with 4 cards each. We have one that has no affiliation. This is Archon the Magnificent. We then have one that has a shield affiliation, which is Elsa Bloodstone. We have one that has an Avengers affiliation, which is the Captain and the Devil. For Marvel Knights, we then have Shang-Chi, and we have Dr. Punisher, the Soldier Supreme. Love these alternate reality characters here. For the Illuminati, who are back again, we have Captain Britain, and we now have Beast. From among the Spider Friends, we have Silk, Agent Venom, and Spider-Gwen. From the Cabal, we have Black Swan, and we have Corvus Glaive. Then from the X-Men affiliation, we have Soul Sword Colossus, Phoenix Force Cyclops, Ruby Summers, and time-traveling Jean Grey. As far as new keywords and so forth, we now have Spectrum. A spectrum is an ability that you can use as long as you have already shown, either in your hand or in cards played that turn, that you have at least 3 different classes of hero. Whether it's strength, insight, or whatever it might be. 3 different classes have to have shown up previously or in your hand to be able to use Spectrum. I would also note here that Wall Crawl has made a return from Paint the Town Red. That's the one where when you acquire or recruit that card out of the headquarters, it goes on top of your deck immediately. While we are on the subject of returners, Teleport does return in limited fashion as well, but we already covered that in this video. We also have a new keyword, which is patrol, and it'll generally say patrol a certain place in the city or patrol X number of adjacent spots in the city or whatever. Patrol basically means that you get that ability if wherever it's saying to patrol is empty. And something might actually say patrol something like the victory pile, and if that's empty, it works. The key is, if it says patrol, if whatever it says to patrol is empty, you get whatever it is. Cross-Dimensional Rampage returns from Secret Wars Volume 1, but in this case, with some other characters, like, for example, Colossus. We have a new keyword, Charge, which is generally with an ambush ability. Charge will tell you how many spaces, so basically once a villain comes out, it might say ambush, charge, 1 space, which then pushes it another space and continues moving things along through the city. We have a new keyword, Fateful Resurrection. So for Fateful Resurrection, if you have that come into play, you check the top card of the villain deck. If it's a Scheme Twist or a Master Strike, the villain re-enters the city. So basically, that would work with a regular villain, but you do get to keep any bystanders that you rescued when you defeated them. It does go into the sewers and push on like normal, do any ambush abilities like normal. You could have a mastermind tactic that resurrects that way, and it just stays there among the tactics. You could also have a villain who has ascended to become a mastermind resurrect that way, in which case they stay a mastermind, they don't then demote themselves and go back to the city. But basically it's a way for something you defeated to just come back to haunt you again. You also have the blank circle of Kung Fu, or Quack Fu in some cases here. Basically, it'll give you a number in front of it, 5th, 3rd, 6th, whatever. Okay? Whatever number's in front of it, it means that, in this case, right, it says 5th circle of Kung Fu. So in this case, this character gets +5 attack when you try to go up against them, unless you can show in your hand or in your played cards a hero that costs 5 or more. If it said 7th circle of Kung Fu, it would mean they get +7 unless you reveal a card that costs 7 or more. The amount that you have to show on a revealed card and the amount of plus attack they get are always the same, and it's always the number in front of circle of. And yes, there are some instances in which something like a mastermind or a mastermind tactic or a scheme twist or whatever might cause someone to gain a blank circle of whatever. You only focus on the top one. They don't get some kind of cumulative effect. So if this guy who's 5th circle of Kung Fu were to get something that gave him 7th circle of Kung Fu, only the 7th one counts, not the 5th. So a pair of sets here from 2005 that both give you some new options for gameplay that play very similarly but do have some different keywords and whatnot between them that are fun to play together along with the heroic set, but can certainly be played with just the heroic set and one of these for a more manageable experience. Next time, we'll start taking a look at 2016 with that year's large expansion, Civil War.